then we have the issue of societal obligations, which is a translation of what we call al-Kifaya. And most Muslims today, if you talk to them about obligations, they're going to talk about what? Their personal obligations. Fardul Ayn, that I have to pray 5 times a day, fast the fast of Ramadan, I make the Hajj one time in my life, if I have a certain amount of wealth, I have to pay zakat, and I have other personal obligations about the way I buy and sell, about what I eat and so forth, getting married, okay? So, Fard al-Ayn is of course absolutely essential in the deen, but we have Fard al-Kifaya, we have societal obligations. And these are all kinds of things. Having a center like this, for example, helps to fulfill a societal obligation. We need to have places where we can meet. We need to have places where we can teach. We need to have places where we can do different kinds of outreach, like help the homeless, things like that. Okay? But also things like animal rights. You know, we are responsible for animals. Animals have rights according to the law, the prophetic law. You know, so that we have to be concerned about that. You know, this delicious beef that you ate, how was that steer raised? Was it allowed to graze? Was it made to eat corn? Because it wasn't created to eat corn, and our fuqaha say you must let the animal eat what it was created to eat. It's got to be able to eat grass and hay. It's got to be able to graze and ruminate and so forth. Okay, so this is actually a responsibility for us, the homeless people. You know, if we take care of homeless people, they are our neighbors. And none of you believes unless he loves for his neighbor what he loves for himself. So in fact, if we neglect the homeless, or the abused, or other people like that are suffering, then we have violated a societal obligation. Allah will ask us about that. And societal obligations are extremely serious, because when they're missed, they cannot be made up. A person may have gone for years without praying. Okay, and then they do tawbah and they begin to pray. They can make up the prayers they missed. It may take them a long time. It's in fact an obligation. So, you know, individual obligations can be made up. Societal obligations, when they're missed, they usually cannot be made up. People have to have homes, clothing, water, you know, food. They have rights to things like that. So we need, and when we begin to do this, we begin to pay attention to reason. Islam makes sense. You know, I mean, like suicide bombers who go into places with innocent people and blow themselves and kill them. Like, does that make any sense to anybody on the face of God's earth? This is absolutely insane. But then you have Muslims that are insane. You know, one of my dear brothers in Pakistan, he was a former general. You know, he told me about a village where, you know, one of the sheikhs came into the village, and a young man comes up to him, very enthusiastic, and he says to him that you've got to help me, you've got to intercede for me. I'm 125 on the list of potential suicide bombers. I want to be number 3 or 4 to get to paradise. I mean, what has happened to us? What has happened to us? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. These are people, God bless them, God protect them, God guide them, but they don't think. And they don't know how to think. And they are told things that make no sense. Did you never read the Quran? Did you never read the Hadith? Do you know nothing about the legacy of the Prophet? Have you no benefit? And this is why also Ar-Raghib al-Isfahani says, as we have in the paper, that never be content with the Islam of anyone until you check their intellect. You know, as we were told here by one of our brothers, a particular woman was told that a certain mosque was bad. Someone wanted to go and pray there, and she said, don't go there, that's a place of shirk. And he said, what did they do wrong? After salat, they say out loud 3 times, La ilaha illallah. Where is your reason? Where is your head? You know, God guide her and forgive her. And God doesn't forgive us. Yes, I mean, saying La ilaha illallah after salah in one voice is a matter that the fuqaha disagree on. Many of them say that it's perfectly permissible and recommended. And some say, no, it's makruh. You shouldn't do it. There may be other positions there too. That's the kind of thing we disagree on. So if they say La ilaha illallah after salah, you maybe don't want to join in, that's okay. But don't get up and start screaming. Don't lose your head. See, and so this is really important. You know, we've got, and societal obligations. You see, once we begin to take societal obligations seriously, then the community begins to transform. Because we've got a lot of things to do. What about pollution? What about polluted water? In Islam, water has rights, and you cannot pollute it. I'm sorry if that cramps your style, but you're going to be cramped. We're going to cramp you if we can. And if we can't do that, we should be doing things as Imam Afroz's brothers and sisters in Australia have done to clean up a river. We can do that. You know, we could go to parts of Canada or the United States and other places, and you know, there are places where we can get land, we can do great things there. We can get water sources, the source of this river or that, and clean it up. Let that water be crystal clear, and maybe have fish that you can eat. I came to Canada for the second time when I was a Boy Scout. I was an Eagle Scout. We were really good. We had a troop that was like an army. You could put us in the mountains with a knife, you know, like a Swiss knife, and we could do everything we needed to do. Start the fire, everything. You know, find things to eat. And we came to Canada, to the Lake of the Woods, you know, for a 3-week canoe trip. And we established our base camp. We portaged into Canada, and then we went way into the Lake of the Woods. Beautiful. I remember we were going across the Lake of the Woods, and we had like a big boy in the back of the canoe, a little boy in the front of the canoe. I was in the back of my canoe, and we were going over the Lake of the Woods, and this huge eagle, the first eagle I ever saw in my life, it was flying over the lake, and it kept coming closer and closer, went right over our heads, right over my canoe. I've never seen a bird like that. It's like its wingspan must have been 6 feet. I could feel the wind coming down. I mean, we went there, and there were bears, there were wolves. You know, we had a problem with a bear that would get our food. You know, and we had to find ways to get him not to do that. We did that. But, you know, all the fish we caught, you know, we caught lots of fish. You know, and we would fix the fish. Now that fish, especially just years after that, you had the acid rain. A lot of those lakes died. You know, the forests begin to fade. I mean, you know, that's your business. That's my business. And of course, we have a lot of things to do. That's why we have to set priorities. You know, it may not be a priority for us to, you know, clean up the lakes around Lake of the Woods. Canadians are probably more concerned about that than we would ever be anyway, other Canadians. Okay, but nevertheless, these are priorities. And once we begin to think like that, then we tap into the religion of the beloved, of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who was the best human being who ever walked on the face of the earth, you know, and who was a mercy to the world, and who took care of business, and who loved people, and who, you know, created a transformative society totally outside the box. No, his enemies could never understand till their last day that he had changed the rules of the game, because they believed everything should still function like a tribal society, and he changed all of that. You know, so societal obligations are really important. Schools, counseling. You know, you get married today, you really should be counseled. Even though the spouse that you picked, or that picked you, is probably just the best one you can imagine. But you need counseling, because marriage is not easy, and in our society, the culture of marriage is virtually defunct. So that's a societal obligation. Abused children, abused women, that cannot be tolerated. We don't tolerate that in the society at large, nor in our own community. What are we going to do about that? And again, harm must be removed. Ad-darar yuzal. And there are few types of harms, that are worse than abuse. Abuse, and again, as we say in here, if you break a rule, you can do tawbah. Like, I didn't know I couldn't do that, so I'll do it now. And I ask Allah to forgive me. If you break a psyche, there's no tawbah from that. And we push people sometimes to the point that their minds crack, their psyches break. We have abused spouses, women and men, who just can't take it anymore. And we have abused children too. That's probably a universal human phenomenon. Jews have it, Christians have it, but like, what do we do about that? And you may know that in our community, when abuse is brought up, it is usually swept under the rug. People even pay you off. Don't bring this up. What about the integrity of so-and-so? What do I care about the integrity of anyone who allows for that? They have no integrity in my mind, but the boy or the girl does. We cannot, and this is another thing too, that once you begin to have reason, we study the deen, we learn the deen. We have lived this deen, we love this deen. And, then you have toleration of dissent, valid dissent. Hanafis believe this, Malikis believe that, Shafi'is that, Hanbalis that. We're cool. If Ibn Hanbal says this is okay, I tolerate it. He's an imam, ala al-ra'si wal-ayn. Imam Malik says that, it's okay. If you're a Shafi, you don't have to do it. And you're okay too. We tolerate that. So we have a line of people where some of the people raise their hands like this and others don't. That's okay. You don't have a problem with that, and I don't either. This makes civilization, because our civilization is the peacock's tail. Unity in multiplicity, not unity in uniformity. And look at a lot of Muslims today. They want us to be all like cookie-cutter Muslims. All dressed the same, all act the same, all pray exactly the same. You're not going to ever do that, because Allah didn't create people that way. You've got to give them some slack, and you've got to allow for valid differences. But when we begin to take societal obligations seriously, then we become dynamic. And these are obligations of the first order. They're not just afterthoughts. Okay, they're really important.